Margaret, can you tell us a little bit about the CFTI initiative? Tell me what it is. You are our chief architect. You are the person that has conceptualized a lot about what Disclosure Today is focused on. You have put together a team of some very, very dynamic people. Tell us about this. Tell us about Disclosure Today and tell us about the CFTI initiative.
Right. Well, welcome to everyone who is here and who's taken the time on Sunday to come and sit with us and discuss this very important issue. Disclosure Today is a non-profit organization which we incorporated in November 2014, and it's a non-profit organization which is focusing on advancing transparency on all issues that are of public interest. And I think we laid down the gauntlet to demonstrate that it's just about talking about doing stuff and asking for stuff to be done, but we also have provided and created a technological platform which will enhance the capacity of citizens to make legally compliant digital requests for information, make proposals to their representatives and to public authorities, and also to responsibly whistleblow with appropriate legal support, free legal support, and social media support. That's what Disclosure Today is about. We have already gained some attention internationally for our prototype, and we won the Global Social Entrepreneurship Initiative in 2014. But we have just recently launched the platform now. In May, we launched the platform, and there are lots of things going on out there where people are saying things about Disclosure Today being PNM and that sort of thing. And we decided that we did not want our initiative really to be tainted with what is going on in this particular general election. And so we had initially decided that we were not going to launch any of our major campaigns prior to general election 2015, so that our platform could in any way be abused or compromised or perceived to be in favor of one political party or another. However, this issue with the campaign finance of general election 2010 came up. It has been on everybody's, everyone is talking about it. The papers, we have articles, every single day we are hearing more and more about how general election 2010 was financed, and we saw this political campaign finance was going to be one of the campaigns we launched in the future, and we said this was an opportunity that we could not miss to create a really powerful citizen public awareness and education campaign around the issue of political campaign finance. And that's why we've decided to get involved prior to general election 2015. And that's what we're doing right now. And the Political Finance Transparency Initiative really is threefold. It is about a long-term effort for political campaign finance reform. It is also about public education. Its objective in increasing financial transparency in the elections of general election 2015, and I think that was the most controversial of our objectives, because the others are fairly non-controversial. Promoting reform in political campaign finance, that has been being discussed over the last decade. Civil society organizations have been promoting that. Political parties have been repeatedly saying that they are going to put forward the reform. They are going to consider it deeply. This particular administration, I believe it was the last quarter of 2014, set up the Joint Select Committee. So I think everyone across the board, we are agreed, political parties and civil society organizations, that we need to reform in this area because political parties are not covered and their financing is not covered at all. Public education is also non-controversial. The third objective, as I said, is the objective that we really are trying to spearhead right now, and which is what we really wanted to discuss with those who would come on and join our discussion today, it is our objective of increasing political finance transparency for 2015. Now, this is an unprecedented call. This is us saying, as it stands right now, everyone is basically saying we need the law, we need the law. Disclosure Today's position is there is no law which precludes political parties from disclosing their financiers to us today. And if there is no law, then there's a moral obligation, there's an ethical obligation. All political parties have agreed that the area ought to be reformed, and once the law is in place, they will. So what is really preventing political parties from coming forward with their financials?
Can I jump in and put you on the and ask you maybe a slightly difficult question here? It's not new that campaign finance reform is not a new topic, it's not a new issue. So what exactly are you doing that is new or different? Because you use the word unprecedented. So what is new, what is unprecedented about it, and how are you approaching this differently if you are?
Okay. What is unprecedented is that we are the first people to call, that's never happened before, to call for political parties to disclose their financiers prior to general election 2015. This puts the ball squarely to provide the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with a good reason for why they are not doing so. What we've done differently is June 12th, we wrote to 15 political parties that we found that were registered, and we asked them for 8 public commitments prior to general election 2015. And maybe I can share on the screen that. And this is the first thing that we're doing that is different. We are writing to them and asking them to do these 8 commitments, which we will go through shortly. This is one of the letters that we sent to Dr. Rowley. Hang on. There are, and every political party, all of the 15 political parties received similar letters in similar terms.
Can you share it again on your screen?
Yeah. Good. And this is the one that, hang on, this is the one that was received, hang on a second. Yeah, this is the one that was received by the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bissessa. Now, I'll go through these 8 commitments. The first thing we did was this, write to them and ask for these commitments to be provided to us, and we gave them a time frame within which to do that. The second thing that we intend to do is the day after nomination day, we view every single political candidate and recording their position on this issue of political campaign finance and who is financing them. And we are also writing to them on the day after nomination day. Thirdly, we are also getting our team together. We have a team of volunteers, and we're getting a team together to conduct an independent assessment of general election 2015 campaign expenditure. And so this is why we're saying what we're doing is completely different. It's not just calling for reform, calling for action now. And so the 8 commitments that we are asking for would be outlined, and I have it up on the screen. And the first commitment is that the political parties will comply with all the requirements of Section 4
Welcome, Justin. Justin Phelps
is Justin there? On.
Yes, Justin is finally on. If you look at this, you see a bald head and a black T-shirt.
Here, finally.
Good, yeah. Great. And it's Tanya. Hi, Tanya. Good. Right, so moment.
Justin Rhoda just asked me what is unprecedented about what we're trying to do.
What is unprecedented about what disclosure?
Yeah, you because you.
what is unprecedented about what Disclosure Today is doing? What is it that is new about what Disclosure Today is doing in light of campaign finance reform?
I think that the unprecedented or very part of it is that we are calling on the parties without legislation being in place to compel them to do so. It goes a lot
Yes.
deeper than this particular issue, because what it does do is it shows, or it ought to be an excellent power to compel political parties to do the right thing without legislation being invented to do so. Did everyone hear what I just said?
Yes, we did. We did.
Right. And so
Does
if you
that
go
answer your
through,
question?
Yes, it does. Margaret is gonna respond to something.
to go to the 8 commitments now, because I don't think that video is showing really well. Yeah. The first commitment is that we apply the Code of Ethical Political Conduct, and that they publish widely and reasonably in advance of election day for the benefit of the electorate what due diligence measures their political party would be taking to ensure such compliance. Now, for those that don't know, there was a Council for Responsible Political Behavior that came into being sometime in 2014. They established a code of ethical political conduct, and the major political parties are members of that council, along with the Anglican Church, the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, TTTI, Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Network of NGOs, Trinidad and Tobago Publishers Association, Communication Workers Union, FITUN, and Interreligious Organization Trinidad and Tobago, and ASHJA. All of them are founding organizations of this code, and the political parties that have signed on to this code would be the Congress of the People, ILP, MSJ, PNM, UNC, DDP, and Association of Independents. If you go to politicalethicst.org, that is politicalethicst.org, you will see that code of ethical political conduct there. Disclosure Today is also a civil society organization that has signed on. We are signatories, formal signatories to that code. Now, what that code calls for is for political parties to have in place appropriate due diligence to ensure that they know exactly where their funding is coming from. It also calls for political parties to disclose to and have audited accounts of within 90 days of the election. And cash or in kind must be accepted on the know your donor principle. They must establish due diligence measures, and they must cause their accounts to be audited and published to Trinidad and Tobago. So what we have called for there in our public commitment 1 is let us know in advance of election day what due diligence measures your political party has established to ensure compliance with this code that you signed on to. Because, you know, we need to move away from lip service, which is what has been happening ad nauseum. You know, lip service, yes, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but demonstrate to us what you have done. If you, we should be given that, you know, sort of commitment up front that this is what we have done, because our vote comes with that kind of price. It ought to come with that kind of price. 2, we're asking that proper records be kept of all cash and in-kind donations received by the political party, whether directly or indirectly, for the purposes of hosting political meetings, and you can see that information there. If you go on www.disclosure.today, these letters are also posted there as well. The third commitment is that proper records be kept of all of your expenditure. by the political party and every third-party supplier of goods, works, and services for the purposes of the election campaign. Because, Rhoda, as you know, we have a situation where a lot of campaign finance distributions or contributions don't come directly into the political party. Many have just, purchase, acquire goods, works, and services for the purposes of meetings. So we are asking that proper records be kept of these things. I will skip over 4, but I just want to go through what I consider to be, and what we in Disclosure Today consider to be, the non-controversial public commitments we've asked for. At 5, we've asked for, within 90 days of the election, a final audited account to be published to the people of Trinidad and Tobago of their total cash and in-kind donations and their expenditures. With respect to public commitments 6 and 7, they deal with the political party ensuring that their party candidates conduct and manage their election campaign consistent with the regulatory requirements and keep the appropriate records, and there is full disclosure of candidate financing, and that the party leadership also ensure that there are adequate controls in place. And public commitment 8 is calling on the political parties to commit to reform, which is the traditional one that everyone calls for. Public commitment 4 is the one that one may think is the most controversial, and it's the most unprecedented aspect of what we're doing. We are asking for at least 48 hours before election day a statement be disclosed to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and the media, containing a list of all sources of funds, whether cash or in kind, from a single source where the aggregate donations exceed 50,000 TT. And the reason, and I will stop there by just saying why we are asking for this. We are not just trying to cause trouble. We are not just trying to insert, ourselves on the national consciousness. We are saying that this is critical information for the voter to make an informed choice in general election 2015. If we want to ensure that we are not in the same place 5 years from now, we need to have that information before us before we put our vote. Because we need to have what is called an informed vote. This is what is meant by deepened citizen engagement. And we are asking for it now because it provides the people of Trinidad and Tobago with the appropriate context to place public decision making post general election 2015, right? To assess public decision making, contract awards, and fair play after 2015. It gives us the appropriate context if we get that disclosure now.
Okay, can I put Justin in? I want to put Justin in a little bit.
Sure.
Justin, what do you think is a reasonable position for these political parties to have? I mean, thus far, before you came on, I played a clip from the UNC in March of 2015. We've heard for the last 2 weeks what the latest party, the Third Force Movement, have had to say about campaign finance reform, and there's a kind of trend to everybody agreeing yes, but we're not necessarily hearing anything. So I was wondering, what were your thoughts on what would be a reasonable position for political parties to have on this issue?
The political parties have answered that question because all of them, without exception, claim that it is something that they're committed to. So if the question is what is a reasonable position for them to adopt, then the answer, if they're consistent with their ideology, must be that they disclose who their campaign financiers are. That is the commitment that they are making to the public, and the one that they want to exchange for a mandate, which is the political theorists will tell you that that is the foundation of the social contract. What is spectacular and really quite audacious and even bizarre is that we have all the political parties saying that their ideological preference is for campaign finance reform, but not one of them prepared to comply with that ideology unless there is legislation passed by legislators which would depend in turn on them being in government. So that is a huge ideological gaping hole in our political landscape, for the reason that anywhere else in the democratic world where people campaign on a certain premise and turn around and say, but they will not comply, they would be laughed out of the political landscape. Instead, what we have is that the main players in our political landscape are trying to sell that to the Trinidad and Tobago public. And it is not only so obviously inconsistent that really it invites the population to say to each and every one of them, without us seeing your commitments put into action, then we're not prepared to vote for you.
Right. They're saying that they're not that they can't tell us anything because if they review their finances, that's like them going into battle with their hands behind their back.
Yes.
And
There's a sorry. As I understand politics and how you are expected to treat the population of Trinidad and Tobago, you cannot have a conditional ideology. You cannot have a conditional commitment to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. You cannot say to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, we believe that what stands between the population and an anti-corrupt government is campaign finance reform, but we will not comply. So the argument that it would tie a party's hands, let's put that to one side and analyze the merits of that just after we get the foundation principles right. Political parties cannot go to a population and say, this is the commitment, this is what we believe is right for the population, but we will not do it. So that is the first thing, and it exhibits a fundamental flaw in the ideological thinking behind our political parties if they expect to sell that to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Separate and apart from that, is it a meritorious argument? Is it an argument that cannot be answered merely by saying, hang on a second, if you believe that this will tie your hands, then explain to us why. The only explanation could be that we believe our hands would be tied because we can't get financing if we disclose. And what that tells you about campaign financiers is that they depend on anonymity in order to hand their money into the political parties. And what it tells you about the political parties is that they are prepared to accept financing from persons who insist on anonymity. So it's a bad argument. It is fundamentally flawed. And what it really amounts to is saying to the population, this is a commitment that we will make in the future. But in the meantime, we are going to continue to accept secret financing. We will not tell you who they are. And the best argument that we could come up with is that it ties our hands, which is really an admission to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, that any political party that wanted to enter the political landscape would fail because the financiers and the limited group of people prepared to finance political parties would not do it if their names were revealed.
Rishi.
And if I am wrong on point one,
go ahead.
I'm wrong on point one that it is in an ideological lacuna, joke, and I'm wrong on point two that it does not exhibit an admission to the population that we have a cabal of campaign financiers running the country with the gift of anonymity given to them by our own political parties. Then the third answer in my mind would be, if it is a meritorious argument, there is a simple and easy way to deal with it, and that is for a political party, anyone so minded, consistent with their commitment, to say to the population, tomorrow morning we're ready to disclose who these persons are, but the other party should simultaneously do the same thing. Any political party that did that, I think, would be exhibiting to the population that they're serious about their commitments. Otherwise, Margaret made the point, and I think that the only difference that I have with her on it is the time frame. Margaret makes the point that we will be having this discussion in 5 years. In fact, it would not matter who won this election if we don't know who is financing the campaigns, because we will be having the same discussion in 18 months' time when we start seeing the Bentleys and the Range Rovers on the road, who has a priority bus route pass, which part of our country is being developed at exorbitant cost, and we would be left to guess whether this is the new crop of multimillionaires and whether they are achieving that status because they finance some party.
I want to throw another question in here and maybe Rishi can jump in and answer. Let's say we keep fussing and asking them to disclose who their financiers are and they continue to resist disclosing who their financiers are. Are there other options? I mean, internationally, regionally, Rishi, because you've done a lot of work on things like finance reform in that area. What other options do we have, or what is being done in other countries to address finance reform?
Well, I think the question of finance reform is nothing new to most democratic countries in the world, so we need to address it from that fact. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's already exists in other similar Westminster type systems that we have and other types of democracies. Some countries do it differently than others. Some countries, for example, in the UK, the Election Commission, for example, has a database in which it has all the money that has been given to different political parties and candidates, which they are obligated to give to the Election Commission on a database, so that you're able now to go on that database and search and filter by corporation, by individual, by time frame and everything like that. And that goes to Justin's point just now, is that once you have that kind of data available, then you can then use that data to correlate the contracts that are being awarded by a particular party whenever they come in power, to see is there favoritism to one particular set of people who may have this finance more than opposed to others. So it goes hand in hand. You need to have the data, and the data is something that we don't have. If the political parties are of the view that they aren't willing to disclose right now at this election, then I think we need to realize as citizens that it's important to us to keep demanding of politicians that what's more important to you? Is it that your financiers and people who provide you money to run your campaign is more important to you than the people who you want to go into office to serve? And if that's the argument, then I think you have a very serious problem in Trinidad and Tobago, and that your first priority should be the citizens, the people that you want to serve, as opposed to who's financing you. I mean, in other countries, for example, they have a model of where the state actually finances parties. And this is where I think a good example for many people on this call would be to look at the report done by the Joint Select Committee. It's available on the Parliament website. And when you look at that report, one appendix to the report is a policy paper that was done by the Elections and Boundaries Commission, and where they actually lay out some of the different arguments and some of the different procedures and policies, both from a legislative point of view and other areas that we can look at to see what system do we want to put in place with regards to financing controls of political parties. I think that's a good, that we should look at that report, because the report is actually done by the body responsible for conducting free and fair elections in Trinidad and Tobago, and use that report as the body of whatever conversations we have with political parties. Tell them, well, listen, we know you all argue that we need to have legislation in place. Our view is that legislation does not have to be in place for you to finance tell me who's financing you. And it's a good paper we can use to start the conversation once you assume power, to get this thing into some legislation form within 18 months' time.
Well, can I interject?
Sure.
A follow-up on what Rishi is saying.
Sure.
We need to understand what a commitment of a political party is. It means that they believe it to be the right thing for the population. So when we're talking about these parties being committed to campaign finance reform, they are saying that they acknowledge it is the right thing. So why then is it that they are saying, we acknowledge this is the right thing, but it must be for the next general election when legislation is in place, not this general election? And that is the difficulty that I have conceptually with the position. Although we don't, perhaps what I am saying is premature, because they haven't adopted a final position one way or the other on the disclosure today correspondence, which is documented.
Well, let me ask Margaret. Margaret, is there anything you can say thus far about the correspondence that we've sent out to the various political parties, responses coming in?
I would say we've taken a decision to be fair across the board and to wait for the time that we've given the political parties, for each political party to expire, because some got it later than others. They would have gotten theirs by registered mail and all of that. And so we are waiting for all the time periods to expire before we come to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and share exactly the substance of the responses that we received. But I can say that we have received responses from 3 political parties.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also say, and I think we are prepared to say today, that the 2 major political parties have not yet, that would be the PNM and the UNC, have not yet responded to disclosure today on this issue. But I just wanted to touch on something that Justin was saying there on this ideological that political parties are saying, yes, this is a good thing, yes, this is the basis upon which we are coming forward to you, we are going to change the law, and yet when asked to do the appropriate thing, and what one would say without a mandate of the law is your ethical obligation, you choose not to do it, and you stand on that. And I think it's tied to a problem that we see recurring in Trinidad and Tobago over and over and over. You know, we look to the law to guide us. We look to the law as our beacon of what is ethically and morally correct conduct. And you know, we have to move from that position, because if political candidates are telling us that now, then we are seeing clearly how they will be operating when they're in government. We have seen that kind of thinking where it got us. So, for example, with Jack Warner being in the parliament, the issue was raised, I think, by it was raised by the leader of the opposition when he said this is wrong. He should not be put in the parliament because of the issues with respect to FIFA and all the things that were breaking. And there was a plethora of legal opinions that was sought and provided to say that it was not anything against the law. And therefore, even though there may have been ethical concerns, that was not against the law, so we will do what is the letter of the law. And we see where that has landed us today. And so we are saying that we want a different brand and kind of political leadership coming from these political parties and from candidates who are offering themselves up to be our servants in the next 5 years. We want to see political candidates who would be prepared to do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. And the interesting thing about this issue is that no one is conflicted on what the right thing to do is, because all of the political parties, as Justin has said, all of the political parties have said this is the correct thing to do, and we are definitely going to make sure we put the law in place when we get into power. So I think that is the point that we really want to bring home to the viewers.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of how deep it runs for the implications for our country. If our entire political landscape is of the view that you can only do the right thing when there is legislation to compel you to do it, the only people who only do the right thing when they are compelled to do it are people who have no value system. And if those are the people that we uplift as constituting the persons from whom we must select governors or the people who govern, then it is a bad mirror reflection of who we are. We have to be in a position, now that we have identified, all of the political parties have identified what the country needs. We have to be in a position, and we have to be the type of people to do it without compulsion. You don't do the right thing, you are not a moral individual or society if you do the right thing only when you're compelled to do it. You have to do the right thing voluntarily. And we know what the right thing is. They have identified it themselves. So what is the problem in compliance?
And I also would like to say, in terms of giving a report on where we are at right now with our campaign, we have the Constitution Reform Forum Trinidad and Tobago, the call of disclosure today by correspondence dated July 5th, 2015, which we have posted here.
Yeah.
I think Olabisi Kaboni who's the chair of the CRF, was having some technical difficulties coming in on this call, but she was going to be here. Yeah, she was going to be here to advance, her organization's position. But you can see there that they have joined with us and support all of the 8 commitments that we've asked for, and they have also gone further. And because I do not want to misrepresent what they are saying, share what further they are asking for. The CRF would like to, in respect to the 8th commitment, they strongly support the call for open and adequate public consultations on this critical matter, and call on all political parties to state in clear terms their unequivocal commitment to ensuring the widest possible participation in such discussions. And they have also proposed their own substantive reform proposals there for regulating the financing of political parties, which were outlined in their 2013 update of their People's Manifesto on Constitutional Reform, which includes the status of political parties should be recognized in the Constitution, the limit on spending for election campaigning should apply to candidates as well as to parties, the current regulations that set a limit on candidates only lend themselves to abuse. They're also saying that there should be some regulatory body with oversight for the functioning of political parties, and that advertising for election campaigns on the public electronic media using state resources should be banned. And they're also saying, drawing on practices that obtain in other countries, they're also suggesting that they require, our legislation requires political contributors to declare the quantum provided once that quantum exceeds some agreed upon specific amount. Put in place a system to ensure greater equity in the funding of political parties. A possible mechanism may entail either the set of a ceiling on total contributions, or provide an estimate of what might be a reasonable annual budget, or allow parties to make up any shortfall, and other criteria there. This also will be shared on our Disclosure Today platform, so it will be available for members of the public.
Right.
And you see, we are asking other NGOs, and we will be writing systematically to all of the like-minded NGOs to support our call, and we are calling on other NGOs to join our call for political parties to disclose their finances prior to G 2015. We are also going to be rolling out a campaign with direct supporting them in asking their candidates. And we will share more details later on the Who's Funding You campaign.
Okay, great. Do you have other groups partnering with you apart from the Constitution Reform Forum? Do you have any other groups undertaking to
Not formally yet.
Right.
Not formally yet, but I think you and Rishi saw at the an interview that you all participated in, that Fixin' TT has publicly stated that they are also calling for political parties to disclose their financiers.
But have they actually asked?
But I really don't have that information.
Well, yeah. If I could just put it this way,
yeah.
Whether or not they've formally asked in their own right, it appears to me clear that they support the call that Disclosure Today has made, so that we could safely say that Fixin' TNT and the Constitutional Reform Forum are on the same page, so to speak, as Disclosure Today. In other words, we've garnered that degree of support from civil society for the letter that we wrote all those many weeks ago.
Okay. Okay, so we've been talking about this for, I would say, roughly an hour. Margaret, what is next for Disclosure Today with respect to campaign finance reform?
Well, the first thing we are waiting on is for the time period to expire. with respect to the 21 days that we gave all the political parties to come forward with these commitments. And it's important to note that many of the 7 of these 8 commitments are non-controversial. If you have already agreed in your code to ensure that the appropriate due diligence measures, to tell us what are the due diligence measures you've put in place. If you're a responsible political party, you ought to be keeping proper records of all cash and in-kind donations received, so that you can receive donations on a know your donor basis, in respect of you're looking at money laundering issues and all of that, which is what we found ourselves in now. Also, proper records for total expenditure. Again, any responsible political party, this should be non-controversial. The publishing of auditing accounts after the 90 days, non-controversial. Ensuring that your candidates comply with the regulation, non-controversial. And non-controversial. And so this is the first thing. When that expires, when that time expires, we are going to come and report to the people of Trinidad and Tobago which political parties have come forward with the commitments and which, if any, of the commitments they are supporting. As I said, we have 3 already that have come forward with substantive responses, and we will be sharing that with people of Trinidad and Tobago. But after that, we are then, those who have not yet responded, they have not responded, we will write again, and we will be engaging with citizens and other civil society actors to support us in pressure on the political parties to do the right thing on this issue of who's funding them. And we also have, as I said at the top of this discussion, we are providing a platform which will to have support, technological support, and be sharing on that to get their candidates and to understand what their each candidate's position is. We are launching the Project 41, to see what each of the political candidates' position is on who's funding you. And we are also doing the independent assessment beforehand. Behind the scenes, we are conducting our own research to develop and inform our agenda post-2015 to support reform proposals in the area of political campaign finance. And that's basically what we want to do. I think the key issue here is disclosure today has called for disclosure today. I don't want to sound cliche, but that's what we've done. And we are going to be doing everything in our power to gain support from the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago for this call, because if we want to have a transformation in our public governance, if we want governance, this is the starting block. We have an opportunity here. This is the starting block. This is the first building block of accountability. Who is funding you?
Rishi, are you still there? I'm seeing you. What takeaway points do you want our viewers to have as we move forward?
I think the main takeaway point our viewers should have going forward is that they really have the power and not the politicians. We seem to have adopted the approach that the politicians have all the power, and all we do is every 5 years we put our hand in the ink, cast a ballot, and then that's the end of it. And then the conversation starts next 5 years. So I think the takeaway point is that we, as citizens, have the power to alert the politicians as to what we really want. One of which everybody's talked about is disclosing who's financing you, and that we need to make the call to the politicians to be very wary of taking our vote for granted and taking our voices for granted. And we also need to put this in context. The context is not after September 7th, it happens next 5 years. We actually have, within the next 5 years, we have local government elections due next year. We have THA elections due the year after that, which will be 2018. No, I think 2017. 2018 we have no elections, and then we go back again to local government elections in 2019 and general elections in 2020. So between now and 2020, we have several other elections that are going to be taking place. So do we then wait for those elections to take place before we make the call for campaign finance reform? I think the answer to that is no. And we really need to force it upon politicians to listen to our voices very carefully, because in the end you're serving our interests and we are not serving your interests. And basically just be open and transparent and let us know who's funding you.
Okay, Justin, your takeaway point?
I think that the main point for the population has to be to realize campaign finance reform is not a lofty ideal that should be part of a party's manifesto. When you realize that campaign finance reform is what is causing the country to be overrun by corruption, with the result that the base members of each of the main political parties cannot get proper health care, transport, potholes in the road, water, electricity, or education, we will realize that campaign finance reform, far from being a lofty, optional ideal for political parties, is an entitlement. And you need to stand up and get it, and insist you get it from the political parties.
Okay,
So
Margaret.
I think that the takeaway point is to understand exactly what the implications of campaign finance reform are for our bread and butter issues.
Agreed. Margaret, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I just want to just re-emphasize what Justin and Rishi has said, and I think people will say, well, who are we to be calling for this, and why can't we wait for the politicians? I think Rishi was signaling this point, that let's bring this point home. Why we have a situation where we repeatedly wait for the politicians to come up with policy proposals and to promote and pass laws, and then we try to hold politicians and elected officials accountable in the context of those laws. This is an opportunity for the citizens to take leadership on this issue, to understand the power that we have, and to support citizens. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to support, want to have a more powerful voice on these issues.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming online and this discussion, because I think it was a very important one for people to have. I think campaign finance reform is something that we keep talking about, but not necessarily in concrete enough terms, and I think we've started that discussion today. I think we need to continue the discussion though, so let's not let this be the last one that we have on this, okay?
As long as I can get some technological...
You hopeless, you absolutely hopeless.
And for our volunteers, many people have volunteered to the effort. We will be in communication with our volunteers to let you know how you can, become very active on the ground on this issue, because we'll be needing you. And thank you for volunteering.
Okay. I think on the Google Plus page we have some questions. So if people want to continue the discussion on the Google Plus, I've been seeing comments coming in from a couple of...
I've been answering those questions.
No, not Q&A questions, just comments coming in on the Google Plus page, not necessarily on the live broadcast.
Well, what are some of the comments?
Okay, let's look. I'm seeing a question. I'm seeing a question by Patricia Smart, which I think is a good question. Which other countries have campaign finance legislation in place, or countries where their political parties disclose who are the financiers without legislation in place? I think that's what people would want to know. There is a precedent actually in the UK where prior to their having a legislative framework in place, there was some levels of disclosure. If it is you want to get more information on that, you can look at the commission. There was a commission set up to look at the whole issue of campaign finance reform. Coming out of that, there were recommendations, and then there was some level of disclosure that took place on the basis of the recommendations, but there was no legislation in place yet. So that is one that I know of. But to me, more importantly, on this question, we don't need to look at what everybody else necessarily is doing on this issue. The issue is everyone agrees that this is something that should be done. I think more and more people are understanding the importance of getting that information, and I'm hoping that this discussion has helped people understand how important that information is before the election, so that you can have an informed vote. And so that is the underlying issue, that there's an agreement that this is something that should be done. We understand the importance of it, and so we are asking for the political parties to do it. I don't think that we necessarily need to look to see if another country has done it, and if they haven't done it and no one else has done it, then we shouldn't ask for it. So yeah, that would be my response to that.
John Brackett says here that he thinks fundamentally the only tool we have at this point is embarrassment. He says with legislation of political consequences, this will remain a quixotic quest. What are your thoughts on that?
Justin, I remember you had a really interesting rejoinder to this
question.
I'm saying that one of the comments that I just read here from John Brackett on the Google Plus thread is, fundamentally, the only tool we have at this point is embarrassment. Without legislation or political consequences, this will remain a quixotic quest.
Okay, I think he has a lot of intellectual comment, but political consequences only arise if the population imposes those consequences. A political consequence means you're not going to get my vote that easy. And I think it harks back to what I was saying a few moments ago. If we has to be done to stop corruption, and if we understand that corruption is what is the majority of the population, then there must be political consequences from that. So I think that there needs to be an education or re-education of the public, something that we have discussed amongst ourselves before, to bring home to them and to articulate to them in a way that is easily digestible. Campaign finance reform being implemented immediately. They are the persons who have to go into the voting booth and exercise or impose. I hope I've understood the question. It's a loaded intellectual question, if I'm
loaded, yes. Loaded, yes. Intellectual, yes. But I think essentially what he's saying is that he doesn't think that we have any other tool beyond embarrassing the political parties.
I think
powerful tool. You see, we mustn't underestimate ourselves. If the only tool we have is embarrassing the political parties, then we have a nuclear weapon. The political parties want the persons that they derive that power from is us. So if we can embarrass them,
agreed.
We need to use it.
Yeah, agreed.
I think we should read out Ola BC's statement as well.
Okay.
Will you?
I can do it, or you can do it. You go
ahead, Rhoda.
Okay. Ola BC Kuboni says, I think disclosure to this initial step is critical. Thanks for noting our support. Following up earlier contributions, it seems to me that ultimately, to get political parties to quote-unquote do the right thing requires strong public support. Hence the need for strong public education. Political parties would always hold back once they sense that the public is not pushing them to do the right thing. And I think that feeds into what you guys have been saying, that the population, the electorate, has to hold the political parties accountable. For me, one of the really
and so that's why
one of the realistic areas is that there are instances where political candidates are also financiers, and I don't see that they will ever want to be in a position where they reveal their hands.
And that's exactly the situation that we had in 2010. I wrote that.
Does anybody heard an articulation from anybody as to what the need for this anonymity on the part of campaign financiers is?
They said victimization. As a matter of fact, at that same third post, launch. That's what a number of people got up and said, how are we going to avoid victimization?
Okay, may I commend may I to the people listening then? Isn't
Yeah.
that utter nonsense for a political party to be saying committed to disclosing your names, but we understand that you're afraid of victimization? Hasn't the incoming idea, the commitment to campaign finance reform, have they rejected victimization as a meritorious objection to it? So with the greatest respect to the political parties, if that is not to tell people why we have 24 millionaires every 5 years, is an utterly poor argument. And I think that what you read from the Constitutional Reform Forum chairperson and Mr. Braffett's question, they tie into each other.
Yes.
Because one of the best forms of public is calling out the political parties.
I have another comment here from John Brackett. He's asking if do we need a plan B post-election with regards to education of the electorate about the significance of campaign finance reform. I want to ask you, isn't that what we're attempting to do right now? In a sense, are we not attempting education right now?
Yes, that is part of our plan A. That's part of our plan A.
Right.
Okay, plan A is 3 for the reform, 2 educating the public, and 3 these initiatives that we are spearheading right now to attempt to increase political finance transparency for general election 2015. With respect to the public education campaign, we are starting now. You know, we are trying to do it in the easiest and most accessible way. Hopefully more and more people will get, familiar with the technology and get on board. But we certainly, post-election, will be rolling out a public education campaign around this, and we would be seeking partners with others to do this. It is certainly something we want to keep at the forefront of the national consciousness. It's not just about right before the election. So yes, John, definitely something that we want to do.
All right, great. I'm not seeing any further questions. I've done like 2 or 3 researches and I'm not seeing any further questions. So I want to say thanks, and let's keep the conversation going in as many fora as we can keep the conversation going, because this is clearly something that is very important.
Yeah. Thanks so much,
Thanks
all the viewers
for
who came in.
Yeah. I want to thank the viewers who came in and the viewers who sent questions or comments for us to respond to. And thanks to the team for showing up.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay, great. See you later, guys.